Wow, thank you very much. Thank you. Around the turn of the century, down in South Texas, just outside of Beaumont, there was a farmer selling much of his land. He was having to sell it simply because times were so tough. He couldn't feed his family. One day an oil company representative came along and said, "Sir, we think there might be oil on your property. Let us drill for it, and if we discover any, we'll pay you royalties on every barrel that we pump out." Well, he had nothing to lose, a great deal to gain, so he said, "Let's do it." Well, they drilled for the oil, and in those days, the derricks were made out of wood. And when they had a gusher, the gusher literally destroyed the derrick. And the greater the destruction, the greater the excitement, because that meant an abundance of oil underneath. When this oil well came in, it literally obliterated the derrick. And before they could cap it, over 100,000 barrels of oil had flowed out. It was the world's introduction to spindletop, the most productive oil well in history. 3 oil companies came out of that field. The man became an instant millionaire. Or did he? The reality is he'd been a multimillionaire ever since he had acquired the property. But until they drilled for the oil, discovered it, brought it to the surface, and took it to the marketplace, it really had no value. I found a lot of people pretty much that way. They've got an awful lot underneath the surface, but until they bring it out and take it to the marketplace, they will never realize even a minute fraction of the benefits that they could bring themselves, their families, their friends, their community, and everyone else. The purpose of Strategies for Success is to share with you, how do we discover the oil? How do we bring it to the surface? How do we take it to the marketplace? How can we learn to be so that we can do, and do so that we can have? A few years ago, the redhead and I, now, some of you know that when I talk about my wife, I always call her the redhead. She's a decided redhead. I mean, one day she just decided that she was going to be a redhead. When I talk about her, I call her the redhead. When I'm talking to her, it's Sugar Baby. And her name is Jean. We went into one of the shopping centers to get a pair of glare-proof glasses. A young man came up to us and the usual question, "May I help you?" And I said, "Yes, I'm looking for a pair of those glare-proof glasses." And he said, "Well, are you a photographer?" I said, "No." He said, "Are you a producer?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, what are you?" I said, "I'm a speaker." He said, "Well, what do you talk about?" I said, "Well, goal setting, self-image, winning relationships, leadership, things of that nature." He said, "Oh, kind of like Zig Ziglar." And I said, "Well, sort of." And the redhead pointed at me and she said, "This is Zig Ziglar." Well, he's a very astute young man. He backed up just a minute or two and looked me over real good, and he said, "Oh, no." He said, "This is not Zig Ziglar. I've seen him on videotapes, and he's always jumping up and down. No, this is not Zig Ziglar." And so I said to her, I said, "You see, sweetheart, I told you we couldn't fool this young man. He's probably looking for some 40 or 50-year-old codger, and he saw us youngsters walk in here, and he knew I could never be Zig Ziglar." And the young man said, "That's right." Well, we went through the transaction, and got to the area where we had to sign your name and surrender some money. And he said, "Now, what is your name?" And I said, "Well, I spell it Ziglar." And he backed up a step. He said, "You are Zig Ziglar." I said, "Yeah, I have been for a long time." Now, the point I want to make is a very important one. You see, the young man had a picture of me. And the picture, as far as it went, was accurate, because on occasion I do jump up and down. The redhead said, "I get excited reading a phone book." I mean, I really, that's my nature. But his picture was so narrow and so shallow, it didn't even begin to give a picture that was true or representative. I find that most people have pictures of themselves which are so narrow and so shallow that it really has nothing to do with who they are and what they're capable of being. You see, so many people have been told so many times for so long what they can't do, they have no idea what they can do. They don't have any earthly idea what they really want out of life because they don't know what's available to them. I could see where this gentleman could get it, and I could see where this lady could have it, and I could see where that lady and this guy could have it, but poor little old me, I could never have those things. What we got to work on is having the right picture of ourselves so that we can use the ability which we have. A number of years ago, a young depressed housewife was out in West Texas. It was one of those cold days. The wind was blowing. The dust was coming in all over the place. And she was feeling down and depressed and miserable. So miserable at the fact that she decided that she didn't like where she was and she was going to do something about it. So what she did, she made a very basic decision. Now I call this misery motivation. She was so unhappy, I'm going to do something about it. But one LT, the lady I'm talking about, determined she was going to do something, so she got busy. She went down to a bookstore and bought a whole bunch of books. I mean, she started reading and reading and reading, and she started getting enthused and motivated about what life really did have to offer. In other words, she had made the first step. She had taken the first one. Joe Saba, who is a speaker friend of mine, says that you don't have to be great to start, but you got to start to be great. As she was reading those books for about 6 months, and one day she went back down to the store and she picked up another book. As a matter of fact, it was on June 18, 1977. She picked up a book called See You at the Top. And she read something in there about some of the philosophies we'll be discussing throughout Strategies for Success. She read something there that really grabbed her. And what the statement really was, well, now, you know, the person who can't read really is just as well off as the person who does read, but then does nothing about it. She decided that she was going to get busy. She called the office. She talked with my executive assistant, Laura Majors, found out where I was going to be speaking, went to the session, and her fire was really lit. I mean, she was excited. She was motivated. She made a decision that day, and she decided she was going to take some action. She decided that she wanted to become a sponsor, sponsoring seminars around this country. She had gone from a depressed housewife to a lady who was a determined individual who could do a lot of things. It's not that she was not happy being a housewife, but she was unhappy with herself and what she was using as far as her abilities were concerned. When she made that little change, it was really very significant. Jerry Lynch, PhD, wrote a book, and the title of the book was in Runner's World, actually. He said, when you believe and think, I can, you activate your motivation, your commitment, your confidence, your concentration, and excitement, all of which relate directly to achievement. Wonderful place to start. And so she got that start, and she ended up sponsoring over 200 seminars in 43 cities around this country. I was privileged to be a part of many of those seminars, most of them, as a matter of fact. Hundreds of thousands of people attended them. She had a chance to study speakers, which ones reached the audience properly, which ones had a message, which one really did the job, and which ones were consistent in their lifestyles. And then she realized that a lot of them had a good message but didn't know how to deliver it. A lot of them had some good qualities, but didn't know how to market those qualities. And so she made a big decision. She decided, I'm going to become a coach. I'm going to open my own business this way. I'm going to become a coach and teach these teachers. The people who are teaching others, I want to teach them. The bottom line is today, this lady who was depressed a few years ago is today one of the most motivated, excited, enthusiastic people you'll ever see. And she's teaching numbers of people how to share the concepts. See, she believes that you can have everything in life that you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want. And you're going to hear me say that a number of times. It works in your personal life, it works in your family life, and it also works in your business life. But it all starts with you. I'll say this a number of times. You got to be before you can do. You got to do before you can have. You got to be the right kind of person. You got to do the right things in order to have all that life has to offer. So how do you be more? Let's start with a little game. Let's say it's 6:30 in the morning. You are awakened by a telephone call. The voice at the other end is an old friend of yours, somebody you like and really trust and respect. And the voice at the other end says, hey, I'm just calling you to tell you something. I should have told you this long time ago. You know, I think you're one of the neatest people I've ever seen. You're an asset to the community. You're a credit to their profession. When I'm around you, I'm always excited. I'm always enthused. I'm always motivated. You know, if I could spend an hour a day with you, I could turn the world upside down. Now, understand this is an old friend. You know, he or she is not pulling your leg. They're serious about that. And the friend concludes by saying, I just wanted to tell you that. I look forward to the next time we get together, and I will see you soon. And they hang up. Now, let me ask you a question. If you were to ever get a phone call like that, how would you feel? Would you be excited? If you were a doctor, would you be a better doctor? If you were a mom or a dad, would you be a better mom or a dad? Would you be a better teacher? Would you be a better salesperson? Would you be a better coach? Would you be better at anything that your life presented for you to do? How many of you believe you'd be better? Can I see your hands, please? All right. Big question. How much more would you know about being a better mom or a better dad or a better household executive or a better doctor or a better coach? Not a thing more. But all of a sudden you feel better about yourself. You know, I'm an asset to the community. I'm a credit to my profession. That old boy said so, and he is one more smart cookie. I mean, you just wouldn't argue with that at all, would you? Your image, the way you see yourself, has a direct bearing on your performance, whatever that performance might be. Dr. Joyce Brothers put it this way. Your image, the way you see yourself, affects the way you dress, the occupation you choose, the individual you marry. Your moral, ethical conduct is determined by the fact that you will see it yourself in a certain way. Because, as Dr. Brothers said, you cannot consistently perform in a manner which is inconsistent with the way you see yourself. Now, the way you see yourself are going to affect the way you treat other people. Your image can affect your team, your company, your family, and your town. For example, I know a young man who just happens to be a coach. His name is Dennis Parker. Now, in 1983, he was the offensive coordinator down in South Texas. They won the state championship. That's 5A football down there. That's a big deal. And then he was given the head coaching job over in Marshall, Texas. Now, this is 1984 when he was given the head coaching job. Now, understand, Marshall had not won a playoff game since 1949 when Y.A. Tittle was the quarterback. Now, that takes you back quite a few years. Well, let me tell you something. Instead of languishing around there, in 1988, he had them in the semifinals of the state championship. In 1989, had them in the semifinals in the state championship. In 1990, they won the whole enchilada. State champions. Now, what had happened? He brought the idea of winning there, and he works with these concepts that you and I are learning right now. This works in athletics. It works anywhere you want to go. Today, he's the athletic director over the Keller School District, and he just got back from South Carolina, where he was instilling his program, Coaching to Change Lives, at University of South Carolina with Lou Holtz. Now, Lou Holtz has been using these concepts since he was at Arkansas, and I don't need to tell you what his record has been. But he spoke to over 500 high school coaches, teaching them that you got to treat people like people, whether they're athletes or whatever it is that they do. And you can have everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want. But the picture says so much about you. Personally speaking, let me tell you something. First 2.5 years, I was in sales, and that's where I got my professional start. I was not what you'd call an overwhelming success. As a matter of fact, I wasn't even a whelming success. Now, that doesn't mean I didn't sell a lot, because I did. I sold my furniture, sold my car. And that is reasonably close to the truth. We had a very difficult time, and as time goes on, I'll share a little more about that. But then one day I went to a meeting. It was in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was a meeting I came within a gnat's eyelash of missing, because at 5:30 the next morning, when I was supposed to go to that meeting, I'd been there the day before, spent the day, didn't learn a thing. Have you ever been to one of those all day, not learn a thing? I didn't. Next morning at 5:30, the alarm clock sounded off. Now, in those days, it was an alarm clock. Now, of course, I recognize it as an opportunity clock. Because if you hear it, you got an opportunity to get up and go. If you can't hear it, that might mean you done got up and gone. Well, anyhow, every day is a good day, and if you don't believe it, you just try missing one of them, all right? So opportunity clock got me out of bed, except that day it was the alarm clock. Force of habit got me up. I cracked the Venetian blinds. We were living in this luxury apartment, 3 rooms above a grocery store, just to emphasize the luxury part of it. I looked outside, and the weather said, Ziglar, no sane human being would get up and go out there in that weather. I was driving a little Crosley automobile that didn't have a heater in it. So I did what any intelligent person would do. I lay down, and we get back in bed. But as I lay there, the words of my mother came back to me from my childhood. And words are so incredibly important. They change lives. As a child, she had said, your word is your bond. And if your word is no good, eventually you're no good. When they had given me the job, which it took me over 2 months to get, they just didn't think I could sell. And the first 2.5 years, all I did is prove they was about right. When they'd given me the job, they had made me promise that I would attend all sales meeting and all training sessions. And in 2.5 years, not only had I never missed one, I had never even been late for one. I rolled out of bed. I went to the meeting. That day changed my sales career dramatically. My hero was conducting the meeting that day. His name was P.C. Merrill. Mr. Merrill had set all of the records. He had written the training program. He was a man of absolute integrity. Now, why he chose to do this, I will never know. But when the meeting was over, there were only 21 of us there that day, but he pulled me aside and said, I want to talk with you personally. I was truly flattered. Here was a man whom I loved and trusted and respected, and he chose me out of 21. Now, why did he? I don't know. The year before, I probably had not been in the top 4,000 out of all of the salespeople in that 7,000 salesperson company. He got me aside, and it was a very short meeting. He said, Zig, I've been watching you for 2.5 years. I have never seen such a waste. And I said, well, Mr. Merrill, what do you mean? He said, I believe you could be a great one. I believe you could be a national champion. I believe you could go all the way to the top. I believe that someday, if you just believed in yourself and went to work on a regular schedule, that you could, number one, be the national champion. Number two, someday you could become an executive in this company. Now, folks, you got to understand my background. I'm the 10th of 12 children. I asked my mom one time, I said, Mom, why so many? And she said, well, son, where do you think I should have stopped? I'm glad y'all have got such a great sense of humor. I might as well tell you, when having an inclination to laugh, you ought to do it, because if you don't, the laughter reverses itself, comes back inside, and spreads your hips. So you want to be sure and get with the program there. Well, anyhow, as a youngster, my dad had died when I was 5 years old. There were 6 of us too young to work. We survived because we had 5 milk cows and a large garden. I was very small as a child. I weighed less than 120 pounds, fully dressed, when I entered the 12th grade in high school. I used to fight everything that moved. My dream was that someday I was going to be able to retire there in Yazoo City, Mississippi. I was going to have my own butcher shop, an acre of ground on the outskirts of town, so that I could have a big garden there, because everybody retired at 65 and nobody had as much money then as they did before. That was my dream, the dream of a little guy from a little town. Mr. Merrill said, you could be a great one. I respected him enormously. I believed him. When I left that meeting that day, an entirely different person was driving that little car back home. I finished the year the number 2 salesman in America out of over 7,000 salespeople. I had the best promotion the company had to offer. The next year, I had the best promotion that was available and was the highest paid field manager in the United States. What had happened? First of all, in 2.5 years, I'd learned the sales skills. I knew how to get prospects, make appointments, handle objections, conduct demonstration, and close the sales. The salesperson was technically ready. But until the person got ready, nothing was happening. The picture you have of yourself is so important. The words my mother used on me as a child were enormously important. The words Mr. Merrill said to me were enormously important. What I want to say about words is very simple. Helen Keller, after the great Anne Sullivan had spent some time with her, her first real day of school, here's what Helen Keller wrote. I learned a great many new words that day. I do not remember what they all were, but I do know that mother and father and sister and teacher were among them. Words that were to make the world blossom for me like Aaron's rod with flowers. It would have been difficult to find a happier child than I was as I lay in my bed at the close of that eventful day and lived over the joys it had brought me and for the first time longed for a new day to come. Folks, words make such a dramatic difference. When the picture changes, then every facet of your life is also going to change. You got to be the right kind of person. You got to do the right things in order to have all that life has to offer. Now, what is that? A reasonable amount, even a large amount of the things that money will buy. Now, money is not the most important thing in life, but it is reasonably close to oxygen. The reality is when you need it, there just aren't that many substitutes. I like the things that money buys. I like to wear nice clothes, live in a nice house, drive a nice car, take that redhead of mine on nice trips. I like to play golf at the country club, and every one of those things costs money. But I love the things that money won't buy. See, it bought me a really nice house. As a matter of fact, it bought me 2 nice houses. But it won't buy me a home. It'll buy me a companion, but it won't buy me a friend. It'll buy me a bed, but it won't buy me a good night's sleep. It'll buy me a good time, but it won't buy me peace of mind. And you see, those are the things that ultimately are the most important things in life, and it's the thing that everybody really wants if you get right down to the nitty-gritty of it. So you can get just about everything on this earth that money will buy without any character. But you can't get any of the things that money won't buy without that character. That's the reason we'll deal a lot with the foundational qualities. And how do you go about getting all of those things? Well, you're probably going to need a new pair of glasses to get them all. A number of years ago, my arms suddenly grew shorter. And as a result, I had to go see my friend Bob Vodvarker, who was my optometrist at that time, for examining me for the new bifocals. Well, he did the examination, said, see me next Thursday. In those days, you couldn't get them in an hour. See me next Thursday, and I'll have them ready. Well, the next Thursday, I walked in, and he put the new glasses on me, and he did a couple of adjustments. He said, well, how do they feel? I said, well, they feel good. He said, well, they look good. You're on your way. Well, I was only about 15 feet from the front door, and as I stepped out the front door, you know how you do, I kind of adjusted my glasses, and I headed for my car. And as I was walking out there, I think everybody knows what I was doing. Man, you're talking about a high-stepping dude. I was in a high-stepping dude. And, of course, I didn't realize that until I drew abreast of the car, and there was my right leg up about 3 feet, and I saw the reflection in the window. Now, realizing how utterly ridiculous I must have looked, I couldn't help it. I just laughed out loud. That was the funniest thing that happened to me. And then I got serious. Because for the first time in my career, I realized the business I'm in. You see, I'm an optometrist. And what I do is I fit people with new glasses. I got you a pair tonight. Now, they're not rose-colored glasses, but they certainly are not rose-colored glasses. These are vision glasses. They're going to let you see things that have been there all the time, but you've never seen them before. Just like what was under the ground outside of Beaumont, Texas, as far as that oil is concerned. These glasses will let you see into the future. And as we get into the goal session that we're going to be doing a little bit later, you will see how you develop the plan of action to get there. But you need these vision glasses in order to get there. But these glasses are remarkable in another sense, in as much as they also are magnifying glasses. When you turn them around, they penetrate right into your very soul. They let you have a good look at you. And when you get a good look at you, you're going to like what you see, because you see, man was designed for accomplishment. He's engineered for success. He's endowed with the seeds of greatness. And we're going to take that look at you in a big way. Now, when I talk about a healthy self-image, I'm not talking about a super inflated, I am the greatest kind of an individual. You know, that's vanity, that's ego. What I am talking about, though, is a good, healthy pride. Now, there are a lot of people who mistakenly believe that man's fall came because of pride. Not so. It was vanity. Honest, legitimate pride is a very positive word. Could anything possibly be wrong with a parent saying, "Son, I am proud of the job you did"? Would it be wrong for a teacher to say to her student there, "You know, sweetheart, I am so proud of the job you're doing"? Or an employer. Proud or pride is a very positive word. I'm proud of the steps that you took. Well, where do you get started? What's your background got to be for all of this? Who can accomplish all these objectives? Well, James Usher was born in Pontotoc, Mississippi. He's an African-American lad. He was born in a barn. And it wasn't a very nice barn. I've seen the pictures of it. He was the seventh of 7 brothers. His dad was murdered with James holding on to his legs. When he was 12 years old, his mother died in his arms of cancer after a lingering illness. The last words she said to James, whom she called Jimmy Lee, 13 words that impacted his life in a dramatic way. "You my baby, Jimmy Lee. Make something out of yourself. Make Mama proud." Today, James Usher is owning his own company. He speaks around the country. He's a trainer. He provides scholarships for those who are unable to provide it for themselves. A remarkable change, because this young man simply said, "I'm going to do something with my life." Now, the rest of the story is simply this. His brothers, when James received 3 checks from the government upon the death of his mother, his brothers wanted him to cash the checks. He said, "Absolutely not." They said, "Why not?" He said, "Well, sooner or later we'll pay for them." They would not even let James, who was 12 years old, move in with them because he wouldn't take the money from the government. For a number of years, several of them were on welfare. Today, James Usher turned to be a very outstanding prophet when he said, "Someday you'll have to pay for it." The truth is, ladies and gentlemen, is that we become dependent instead of independent. And he preferred independence. Why would he accept something from somebody else when he's capable of providing for himself? He was cutting grass at that time, making over $100 a week, and going to school in the process. Now, what I'm talking about really is the fact that we have a philosophy. We have a young man who 4 years ago got involved in something that I thought was pretty exciting. He went to work with the Dallas Life Foundation. Now, it took him a year to get started, and by that I mean he was working with the homeless people. He installed this philosophy, Strategies for Success, that we are re-recording right now. And the first year, you got to get people in the pipeline. But starting with the second year, 100 people every year have moved from street, no home, no job, to full-time employment. The concepts work. That's what I'm saying. It's not who your parents are. It's not what's happened in the past, but it's what you have been able to do. The success of this program has been mentioned on national radio as a model for other organizations. Elizabeth Dole has mentioned the program during some of her public appearances. The National Center for Policy Analysis continues to refer to our training program as an example of how private sector programs are more effective than government-funded programs. How effective is it? When you take 100 people off the street, put them into full-time employment, folks, that is effective. And I don't think I need to tell you, but the individuals who are homeless and on the street, as a general rule, don't think very highly of themselves. They have a horrible self-image. When you change that, you change everything about them. Now, I want to emphasize a point. When I verbalize something or record it or write it, it is only after I validated it psychologically, theologically, and physiologically. Because we are physical and mental, and we are spiritual. I speak with confidence, not because of what comes from me, but because of what comes through me. And there's a dramatic difference in what I'm talking about now. But let's look at you, and let's talk about you very specifically. How many of you consider yourself to be honest and at least reasonably intelligent? Can I see your hands, please? All right. How many of you honest, intelligent people, as a general rule, get more work done on the day before you go on vacation than you normally get done in 2 or 3 days? Can I see your hands, please? All right. Now, if we can figure out why and learn how and repeat it every day without working any longer or any harder, does it make sense we'd be more valuable to ourselves, our family, our company, and our community? Does that make sense? Answer is yes. I'll help you with the tough ones, okay? There's no question about it. All right, now let me take a look and see why that is you get so much more done. How many of you sat up all night, the night before, the day before vacation, studying your job so you'd be better at it, as versus how many of you spent 30 minutes planning tomorrow so you could use what you already knew more effectively? How many of you did the latter? Can I see your hands, please? All right. In other words, you had the knowledge, the information, everything inside already. Now it's a question of how are we going to use it. Now, as I go down this list, what I want you to do is I want you to remember one thing, and I'll remind you of this 2 or 3 times. And here's what I'm going to remind you of. I'm now talking to you about you. I'm not talking about Paul who's not here or Charlie who's not here. I'm talking to you about you. So as you look through your notes and all and evaluate some of these things, first of all, you've already said you're honest and at least reasonably intelligent. Now, question, how many of you would like to be more intelligent? Can I see your hands, please? All right. A study done at Georgetown Medical School has revealed that in 100% of the cases, no exception, none, when your vocabulary goes up, your IQ goes up. So if you want to be smarter, then all you got to do is work on that vocabulary. Now in the process, you'll learn a lot of things. Now the night before, the day before vacation, you got a sheet of paper out or now your laptop, and you said, now let me see, tomorrow I got to do this and this and this and this. How many of you kind of did that? Kind of see your hand, all right? Now we call that goal setting. Then you got them organized in the order of importance. How many of you did that one? Can I see your hand? All right. Let me encourage you to make one slight change. Make the first thing on the list the most disagreeable thing. For example, if you got to go give Charlie the worst news he could ever receive, and he's number 5 on the list, and you finish number 1 in the back of your mind, got to talk to Charlie. You finish number 2, got to talk to Charlie. Finish number 3, got to talk to Charlie. Get him out of there. Deal with the bad one first. Like this old boy down home would say, friend, you know, if you're going to have to swallow a frog, you just don't want to look at that sucker too long. I mean, he ain't going to get no prettier. You can, matter of fact, he going to get uglier, okay? So in other words, you do that. Now, you got it organized. You accepted responsibility. Barbara Tuchman, 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner, said the number 1 need in America today are people who will accept responsibility for their performance and what they do with their lives. You demonstrate by the fact that you want to get as much done as possible, that you're a caring individual. Because if you don't do it, somebody else is going to have to do it, and you know that's not fair. And then you come under conviction, and so you make the commitment, hey, I'm going to do it. You know, some people are about as committed as a kamikaze pilot on his 39th mission. I mean, they just really don't take it seriously now. Now, why is commitment so important? Let me tell you why it's so important. When you've made a commitment, whether it's to be number one in the nation in sales, or make the team, or the dean's list, or salvage the marriage, whatever it is, when you make the commitment, when you hit the wall, not if, when you hit the wall, your first thought is, how do I solve this? If you haven't made the commitment, your first thought is, how do I get out of this deal? That commitment is so important. You're even optimistic now that you've got a game plan that you're going to finish it. You know, as most of you know, I'm an optimist. I'd take my last $2 and buy a money belt with it. I mean, that's my basic structure. But you now are optimistic because you know that you've got a good game plan, and the next day you show up, you're not just punctual, you're 5-10 minutes early. Then you immediately get busy. You don't look around and say, well, I wonder what I ought to do now. You got your plan. It's right in front of you. You immediately get busy. Now, this incidentally takes a certain amount of courage. Now, remember, I'm talking to you about you. You're displaying courage because there are going to be some of your buddies that nudge him and say, well, look at that. He's just kind of apple polishing this morning. You watch him now. That's what he's doing. It takes a certain amount of courage. But when you let somebody else row your boat, they're going to take it where they want it to go, not where you want it to go. You're enthusiastic about what you're doing. You're highly motivated, and you're very decisive. When you finish one task, you move to another. Now, let me give you a mathematical fact. How many of you, first with a question, how many of you have ever noticed that as a general rule, people with nothing to do want to do it with you? Can I see your hand? Okay. Now, when you've got a game plan, how many of you ever had a paper route when you were kids? Can I see your hand? All right. Let me ask you, did you deliver those papers alphabetically or geographically? Okay. As kids, you learned you got to have a game plan. Otherwise, you'd spend 3 days delivering one morning's route, would you not? All right. Now, on this day before vacation, when you finish the task, you don't run, but you move decisively with purpose to your next objective. You'll discover that people will not stop you when you're moving decisively and with purpose. You will save 2 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 10 minutes there, 15 minutes somewhere else. I can absolutely guarantee you, you will save a minimum of 1 hour a day by this simple process of knowing what your objectives are for that day. An hour a day, that's 5 hours a week, that's 250 hours a year, that's 6 full weeks of effort that you can expend to get something that is beneficial to all of you. What you're doing is you're working smarter. You focus on the issue at hand, and you discipline yourself to keep after it until you have finished it. Roughly 200 CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies serve time in the military. 26 of our presidents serve time in the military. Now, what do they teach in the military? Exactly what you are using on the day before you go on vacation. Commitment, responsibility, promptness, self-starter, decisiveness. You persist, incidentally, until you finish, and then that good old PMA kicks in big time. Positive mental attitude. And we're going to talk about that a whole lot later on. You build momentum. How many of you folks ever hit a golf ball? Can I see your hands, please? All right. How many of you have noticed that when you start out by sinking a 4-foot putt, and then a hole later you sink a 7-footer, and a hole later you sink a 9-footer, and by the time you get to the next one, man alive, that hole looks as big as a wash bucket, doesn't it? Anybody, wow, my goodness, one day enlarge the hole. What's happened to the hole? Nothing. What's happened to your thinking? An awful lot. Same thing on any job you're on. As you build that momentum, your confidence goes up and your competence follows right behind it. You are taking advantage here. You know what? You're taking advantage of the experience that you've had all your life, the training you've had all of your life, the education you've had all of your life. That's what you're taking advantage of here and using on the day before vacation. Your training comes up, your knowledge comes up, and without even realizing it, you are becoming the team player extraordinary. Now, why do I say team player extraordinary? You know, folks, people are not going to believe everything you say, but they're going to believe everything you do. And that's whether they're kids at home or they're on the job. when they see you moving with purpose, then they kind of pick up the slack. Now, they might not pick up the slack like you're doing, but they move a step faster here and a step faster there. You will impact the productivity of the entire company by your own actions that day. Like I say, people will believe everything you do. Let me get you to empty your hands just for a moment. I'd like to go through a little exercise with you to demonstrate what I'm talking about. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, go. Then I'd just like to get you to slap your hands, okay? 1, 2, 3, go.